Hey, welcome to Hot Route Takes. Today we're going to do our top 10 corner rankings. We just finished up our top 10 receiver rankings. So, without further ado, we can dive into it. Christian, I think you went first last time. Chase, you want to lead the way this time?
Yeah, man. A very interesting position. Coming off the receiver rankings, those type of the top 10 guys we had in our list on that version. We know each of those guys present a matchup problem for defenses. They are playmakers and they wreak havoc on defenses. So, in our list today on the top 10 corners, that's the same thing is said for opposing offenses. When you have a shutdown corner, lockdown corner that can just erase good receivers on the other side of the ball, makes the defense's life so much easier. So I enjoyed digging around and trying to figure out who I wanted to leave on and off my top 10 list because it's a very subjective position. There's not a whole bunch of numbers you can go off of. You just kind of play the eye test who's good at shutting number one guys down, and there's quite a few in this league. But I'm excited to dive in, guys. I'll lead it off. And at number 10, I've got Christian's guy, Asante Samuel Jr. He's just a really impact young guy who has looked good and looked the part of a shutdown corner since he's entered the league. And he may have his hiccups here and there at getting beat, but I think the playmaking and the ability to disrupt and get interceptions is what had him on this list for me. A lot of these other guys are kind of just like they shut a guy down completely, but he may. I think he's what people think Diggs is in Dallas. I think Asante kind of fits that mold for me to where he actually makes plays and wreaks havoc, game changing turnovers. We saw the postseason. I mean, 3 interceptions off Trevor Lawrence is no small feat in itself. So a great game breaking turnover creating havoc to have on the outside for the Chargers, and I think he's a good one to lead off my list with.
All right, so you went with Asante Samuel. Is that
That's
correct?
correct, yes, sir.
Gotcha. I went out for a second there. Don't know what happened, but I am back. My number 10 corner, Tyson Campbell. Jacksonville,
Okay.
former Georgia player, second round pick, number 33 overall, a couple years ago, and we saw him kind of really come into his own as of late. He gets a lot of ball production. He's all over, getting his hands all over passes this year with 3 interceptions and 15 passes deflected, and that's a lot of passes deflected. I think that was close to top in the league, if I'm not mistaken. I think the person who had the most was, we'll get to him later, but it was 20. Um, and I think he'll continue to ascend with Jacksonville. Physical guy. I think he can be a star in this league. So just wanted to sneak in somebody that isn't really talked about a whole lot, but I think has had a good start to his career.
Yeah, I like that guy. I had him just outside. I went back and forth on two guys and I actually landed on AJ Terrell. I understand last season wasn't that good for AJ Terrell, but I think his sophomore year, we actually seen AJ Terrell, what he was capable of in his sophomore campaign, put himself on the map. That year he was at 85.6 PFF coverage grade. I understand in 2022 the play did drop, but I expect Atlanta to have a huge bounce back this year with how that division's kind of looking and the quarterback play over there in that division. I'm kind of just projecting just next season AJ Terrell to kind of make his mark and have another breakout year.
I like it. I like it, Christian. Campbell, I really didn't dig a lot on Campbell, I have to say, Brian. So that was an interesting leadoff for me. I think he's a promising player, but Jacksonville's defense, I didn't like think of shutdown good defense, so I didn't see his name and that like think to land on my list. Terrell was a just miss for me because he has that name power and he's had good years in his belt. I have a few more guys I like right now, but I do love him as a player. I think Atlanta's got a good corner there. For me, my number 9 is probably my most controversial one. You could say he's fallen off a bit, but just a few short years ago, I think he was the top corner in the game as Stephon Gilmore. He's bounced around now, so you definitely think he's on the downslope of his career. But as quickly as everyone else said that he was done and over and washed, whatever, he bounced right back and had some good snaps and played and guarded some of the best receivers and still graded very well in every category for the Colts last year. So I think his name power and his longevity has got him on this list for me. Not necessarily projecting him to be better than any of the other guys y'all may have mentioned already or will mention. I just think the career he's had and the respect he still warrants against good receivers was enough to put him on the list for me. And the fact that he's a Carolina Gamecock, and I wanted to sneak him on, so I made a way to do it.
Understood. I do have 3 honorable mentions. I wanted to kind of save them for the end to kind of rise that dramatic effect, if you
Okay.
will. But I did want to add one more thing on Tyson Campbell. He had the 8th highest PFF coverage grade this year, and that's kind of that's pretty good
Yeah.
considering the young player that he is. And my number 9 player, this is a player that I feel like I really don't know where you guys are going to be on him, but I got Marlon Humphrey right here. I think he's he's on the downside of his career, but he's still a corner that can give you a lot in the slot, particularly, but also can line up out right wide. He can do man coverage and zone coverage, and he's just a do-it-all corner. Now, obviously, health is the big thing. If he's healthy and he's on his game, I think he's still a top-level corner in the NFL.
Yeah. I had a question real quick for Chase. Maybe with your guy
Yeah.
going to Dallas with Diggs, do you think maybe him getting that number 2 spot will help him? Maybe show him and why he's still older guy, but why he can be on this top 10 list because he's going to be going at number 2 guys more than likely.
I agree. Yeah, with that, I think that's a good defense for him to be in. They're not going to ask like too much of him, and he's the point in his career that he can handle whatever role they're asking. And he finds a way to like. I thought he was really done myself. Last year, he's been cut by a few different teams and whatnot after he's left New England. But the play he showed me with Indy last year to like still find a way to make like he knows the game. He knows what receivers are trying to do to find a way to stop a first down and get a pass deflection, to know what quarterbacks are trying to do against defense. I think that football IQ plays very well for him next year. So that's why I think he'll still be a very successful corner.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So my number 9 guy, I would think would be higher on him. I just have him at this number 9 spot because he's a young player, and that's Woodley for Seattle Seahawks. He had the 6 interceptions. He showed flashes, and I think if it wasn't for Sauce Gardner, he would have easily probably won Defensive Rookie of the Player of the Year just because, he was out there making plays. Seattle needed this guy to kind of be on this team, and they needed a lockdown corner, and he was that guy his rookie year, stepped up to the plate and did that. And I think just with that division and how it looks it's going to be played out, I expect him to maybe even take a bigger step next year and show why he can be a top 10 corner in the league. And just, they gave him the assignment of the number 1 wide receiver as a rookie, and we seen what he did.
I like it, Christian. He was a just miss for me. I like both Seattle corners. Both of them just missed. It's not really because of them themselves, but I think the defense in Seattle it still doesn't like do much for me. I don't see them being like one of the most dominant defenses, but I think it won't be due to outside corner play at all. I like the guys they have out there. Moving on to 8 for me, I went with my other beloved South Carolina Gamecock, J.C. Horn, which guys may be higher, maybe lower on, but I think he's got all the physical tools to be a top 5 corner. He's missed some time with health issues the first couple years in his career, so that's what's got him slotted a little lower. But when he's been on the field, he's been one of the better corners. Last year, he was 1 of 5 to not allow a touchdown all season. He had a 52.6 passer rating against, which was the second highest mark in the NFL. And as I said, all the physical tools are there. As far as his combine numbers, he was in the 95th percentile in arm length for a corner, 98th percentile for vertical jump, 96th percentile for broad jump, And it's just that type of package that you want. That's what you look for. That's why he was a high draft pick as a corner. It's a matter of him staying on the field and just getting those opportunities to make a few more plays, and he'll move up the list for me.
I like that a lot, Chase. Very toolsy corner as
Mhm.
well. He can do a lot of things for you, particularly in a press man scheme.
Mhm.
Remember him coming out with someone else in this list. We'll talk about later, Pat Surtain.
Mhm.
An interesting duo when they were coming
Yeah,
out. Which one you liked?
they're both great. They are
Uh,
both great. That's for sure.
Very good, very good. So my number 8 corner is Tariq Woolen. He exploded on the scene this year. Christian obviously just talked about him a little bit, and he didn't have these super high expectations being a 5th round pick, but playing in that scheme that's cover 3 based, which is notoriously known for having long, lengthy corners that can run down the field and cover a lot of area, and that's what he is, man. He's freakishly long. He's got some of the longest arms of corners that came out in recent
Mhm.
memory. He's also extremely fast. He's one of the fastest players probably in the NFL, and he's going to get his hands on a lot of balls going forward. And I really don't think there's a huge gap between him and Ahmad Sauce Gardner. Personally, I mean, one just plays for the Jets. If
Okay.
Woolen played for the Jets,
Okay.
he'd probably be up there
God.
too.
Here we go. We're going down this road, Christian.
But
Goodness, this guy.
The New York hate has shown itself early.
the New
Golly,
York
bro.
media, that's what it is. They hype
That's
up
what
everybody.
it is, right? We'll talk about him later, man. I'm not going down this road with you today, Brian. God.
I
All
know.
right, man.
Love to get it hot in here, man. Love to get it hot in here.
All right, then, man. Goodness. Well, number 8, I know y'all are probably both bigger on this guy. I just cannot get on this train, and that's going to be Travon Diggs at Dallas. I think he has the interceptions, and yes, I think with Stephon Gilmore being there, he's going to boost help him, but maybe develop in a little bit. But I'm just not a fan. I understand he gets the interceptions, but he gets burnt a lot. And I mean, a lot. So I think if he actually works on that, I think the ball hawking skills are dangerous. I mean, he's probably easily top 3 with ball hawking skills in the NFL. I'll at least say that about the guy, but I think just the interceptions were there. They went down this past year, and then we just seen them get burned a lot more. I think a lot more wide receivers are maybe picking up on, well, I know this guy's going to be greedy. I just have to get him to bite on something, and I can take it to the house. I think if he picks that up and changes where he's not maybe being so aggressive, then he easily can move up this list. But I just have him at 8 right now.
Yeah. That's interesting. You think we're higher. I don't know. I can't speak for Brian, but for me, he was a just missed. I recognize the playmaking and the ability to get his hands on footballs and get turnovers. But I went with Asante Samuel Jr. off your team just because I think he does that as well and doesn't get burned as much as you talked on. So Diggs was a just miss for me, but with that defense, bringing in Gilmore to like play the just football IQ, know the chains and know the routes that you're about to face will allow Diggs to still be that like gambler Marcus Peters type, just create turnover corner, which that's probably what he's going to be good for a while. So he'll continue to excel at that, in my opinion. But that's not enough to warrant being on my list because I think you need to impact the game more, make more problems for offense. To get over some of these guys that I've listed. But I don't hate them being on your list there, Christian. Going to 7, I have a veteran that's probably got some name power, I would think, still left. I don't know if he'll be on your list, but I think he's still a very solid corner, and that's Darius Slay. And I'm happy to put him here because he had a real big bounce. Like, he looked very bad. Was it his first year in Philly, I believe? Because he was so good in Detroit for so long, but he just got beat a lot in his first year in Philly, and fans were down on him. A lot of media was down on him. But he bounced back in a big way last year, and you can see that in Philly's success as they were the dominant force of the NFC all season. And good corners, how you play against the game's best is what makes it for me. And this guy against who me and Brian, I think Christian, you had him at 2. We all have Justin Jefferson up there as one of the best receivers in the league. He balled out Monday Night Football against Justin Jefferson, man. He shadowed him.
Yes, he
He
did.
shadowed him the whole game. Justin Jefferson had 6 targets, 2 of those were picked off by Slay. Jefferson had 1 catch for 7 yards matched up against Darius Slay. Like, that's impressive. Like, you're
Yeah.
not washed if you're holding Justin Jefferson down. Whether the pass rush was getting to Kirk that night or whatever, he still made plays, man. Like, he was shutting down a really good receiver. And I think that was enough, and the bounce back we saw from Darius Slay to land him at number 7 on my list.
Oh, that's very fair, Chase. I like that a lot. At number 7, I got Stephon Gilmore. And I know, Chase, you talked about him earlier. I still think this guy's very good, man. And he posted a PFF grade of 81.1 in coverage last year, which was good for 9th in the league. And 2 interceptions and 11 passes defense. This guy's getting his hands on footballs. He's very good in man, and as he's gotten older, he's gotten even better in zone coverage. And so I'm going to touch a little bit more on Gilmore because there's another player that's in this list, and they're going to be a great complementary duo in that secondary. So I don't want to give away all my take on that, so I'll wait.
All right, number 7, I have J.C. Horn. I think I have him a little bit higher because I kind of dug into him and found some stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. In his NFL career, like Chase hinted on, he does miss time. He's still less than 1,000 snaps. But with the 2 years he does have, he's only had 1 touchdown on his head. And, I mean, he's only got 318 yards in total. And when he is in coverage, his passer rating is normally a 48.4 passer rating when targeted in the NFL. Granted, this is, like we said, a big year 3 for him. He has the flashes. He's shown that he's disciplined. He isn't greedy. I just think his big thing is health. If he's healthy, I think these stats are just going to look even better on paper. So really my biggest concern is just staying healthy. And I think other than that, I'm kind of excited to see this Panthers defense as a whole with just kind of how that division is right now. And I think with a lot of what we're seeing, young quarterbacks, and even with a Baker Mayfield, if he starts maybe a very turnover-friendly quarterback in that division, that J.C. Horn, if he's on the field, he's going to have a good year.
I love it, Christian. I love it. I'm a big J.C. Horn guy. Tools are all there, man. The exciting defense, as you touched on.
Yep.
We will moving just outside my top 5. I have my favorite corner, my favorite team, our star outside player. I think the best player on or you argue him or Roquan, but I think Marlon Humphrey is one of our most valuable players, and I have him at 6 on my list. I kind of want to fight. I know, Brian, you mentioned him at 9. I want to fight back a little for my guy on that front where you said maybe the injury concerns. Last year was a big bounce back for Marlon. 2021 was rough with injuries, and he got beat a lot more than he was accustomed to. But, man, last year he took a huge bounce back, as we mentioned with Slay. And I think the only thing holding back Marlon from being higher for me, because he can do everything, is the interceptions. He doesn't create interceptions. That said, he doesn't get targeted a whole lot either, man. He is a great corner, and I've been singing his praises for a long, long time, just as a very underrated player, not only a corner, but just in football in general, any position. I think he's one of the most underrated because we line him up everywhere. He does everything we ask him to. We mentioned J.C. Horn being one of the 5 guys without allowing a touchdown last year. That Marlon Humphrey also falls in that category. His 90.2 coverage grade in man defense led all qualified corners. So there's really not much you can't ask him to do. The Ravens defense leans a lot on knowing Marlon Humphrey can go out and erase guys, and he does a great job. He's physical. He can tackle well for a corner, which is big in a defense when you have a good tackling corner. And although he may not put up the interception numbers, he's one of the best at forcing fumbles. He punches that ball out quite a bit, and ball carriers know to have that thing up tight when he is around because he's going for that punch out, which he got a handful of in 2020 and 2021. But the receivers got the scouting report a little bit, so that he didn't force quite as many last year. But that's the only thing holding him back for me. I think he's still – I don't really see him as on the downside of his career. He's still very promising, very shut down. I'd match him up against any of the receivers in the league, and I'll feel confident because he's proven a lot to me over his Ravens career.
Oh, that's fair, Chase. I think highly of him too. I have him at
Yeah,
9. There's only a handful of guys I got over him, and I have a lot of respect for him. It was just 2021 was a little bit down, and
that was his worst year for sure. That was his worst year health wise, and that was his worst year in coverage. But I think he showed enough last year. He balled out last year, man. And the addition of Roquan, like you have a great one of the best middle linebackers, and I think you have one of the best corners. So that makes for a solid defense. I think an elite type pass rusher would be the only thing this defense is missing for me because I think there's elite pieces everywhere else, and Marlon's a big reason for that.
yep, Kyle Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Um,
You know it. You know it, man. They're everywhere. I love this defense. I'm excited about
you should be, man.
it.
I'm excited for you guys. So my number 6 corner is Travon Diggs, and I was surprised he wasn't on your list,
uh,
man. I was, and the reason why is I get him giving up a lot of yards,
mm,
right? But when you have a player that forces turnovers, that can change the game by himself, and he does it on a consistent basis, and he's got, you said maybe top 3, maybe the best ball skills in the game as a
yeah,
corner. He catches like a receiver,
yeah,
man. And if that ball is a 50-50 ball, this is the kind of guy you want out there against the top end receivers when it's up in the air. You want a guy like that. And I think that value shows itself a lot. Now, is he going to get beat? Is he greedy? He
mm,
is, but you got to learn to live with that. And like being a Miami fan, I've seen a very similar situation as has Chase in a corner that is a very risk oriented player that's going to take risk to get the big reward and get these interceptions. And then you have the player on the other side who's just very consistent, always is where he's supposed to be, takes away the play. And then basically what you're doing as a defense is funneling passes to your playmakers on defense. And I watched this with Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. Byron Jones being a very sticky man player, and Xavier Howard being a very Travon Diggs being a very Xavier Howard esque
yeah,
player, and going to get these interceptions. And no disrespect to my boy X, unfortunately he didn't quite make the list this year because last year was a little rough. But Travon Diggs, man, he gets his hands on a lot of passes. I think that value is just extremely high, and his coverage is, I think, he's overhated about it. He posted a 77.4 PFF coverage grade, which is good for 17th. That's not great, but ultimately, I think you can live with
yeah.
it
I
when you're
may
getting
have
this kind
let
of ball
the
production.
Dallas media hate, like how you have that New York hate, like funnel you sometimes with Sauce Gardner and Aaron Rodgers.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's a little more than sometimes. I may have let that get to me with Dallas. He's just the talk. Like he's such a huge talking point on Twitter because you'll see a clip of him getting toasted, like Eli Apple level burnt, and then you're like, "How's this guy any good?" But no, he changes a game, man. He's the best at what he does, and that probably should have been enough to warrant a list appearance on my list. I agree with you, Brian.
All right, at number 6, I have a guy I think maybe a lot of people kind of forget about, and that's, of course, going to be the New Orleans Saints corner, Marshawn Latimer. I think the past couple of years, the team's kind of been not that good. They've had Andy Dalton. Kind of since Drew Brees has been gone, the quarterback play's been low, and kind of where the league is at this point. If you ain't got a good offense, you're not going to get talked about a lot. But Marshawn Latimer last year, it was against the Eagles with Garner Minshew. You take it with a grain of salt, but he had a PFF coverage grade of 93.4 overall grade. I think with those wide receivers and how good and crazy they were and how good that offense were, I understand it wasn't with Jalen Hurts, but still, I mean, he locked down A.J. Brown, and at times during that game, he was on Smith. And this guy, he does allow a lot kind of touchdowns on his head. I think over the last 3 seasons, he's had 15, but also over the last 3 years, he's had 32 pass breakups. So this guy, with Cam Jordan and him on the same team, they cause chaos. This guy's more than likely he's going to make your number one wide receiver work for it. And I just kind of like what I said about J.C. Horn with this division. I mean, they're playing these teams 6 times a year, and it's a bunch of young quarterbacks, and I think a lot of these veteran corners and even young corners that have that skill set in this division are going to have big years. And that's kind of why I lean more towards Marshawn Latimer, just because I expect these young quarterbacks to kind of struggle very early, and more than likely they're going to run into J.C. Horn and Marcus Latimer. And that's why I got him up. I think with Derek Carr, there's going to be a lot of hype going on in New Orleans, and I think that's just going to help this defense kind of get hyped up more and make big plays.
I like that, Christian. Man,
Yeah.
you're big on the NFC South QBs being terrible, which is a smart philosophy because I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it, and we're listing guys, and I'm like, God, this position is loaded, man. There's some good guys that aren't making my list, and Lattimore being in that
Yep.
division, I think he's in for a big year. I would agree
Oh
with you,
yeah.
man. All right, well, we'll move on to top five guys now, and I don't know if this guy will even be on y'all's list. We'll see. I just want to give him some love because he anchors one of the most consistent, one of the best defenses I think year in and year out, and I think he's the guy you look for outside to anchor all of that, and that's Charvarius Ward of the Niners. A surprise name, but when you look at his numbers, he's putting up some very, very solid numbers. He had 81.0 PFF grade, which I believe was top three in all of corners, just in all corner grades, like everything encapsulated. Whatever the Niners asked him to do, he was doing. So um,
Yep.
I don't pay a lot of attention to West Coast football with those 425 kickoffs. I'll have red zone on and I'll see the highlights and scoring plays, but there's a reason the Niners ain't on red zone a lot. It's because other teams ain't dropping the ball down on the field on them a lot. And having a guy on the outside like Ward that erases receivers is a big reason for that, man. That defense is always sound. It's always disciplined, and they make game changing plays with a great linebacker, a great pass rusher. I think the corner doesn't get talked about enough on that defense for me. Nick Bosa gets a lot of love. Warner gets a lot of love. But I wanted to show some to Ward because I think he's a hell of a football player.
I like that, Chase. I do not have him on my list, but yeah, he's a very consistent player year in and year out, and I don't think he gets enough
Yeah.
love. Uh,
He's not a name that jumps out, but I looked at some of the grades. I was like, well, this guy's up there on everything I'm looking at. How is he not on my list? But he's just not a household name, which is mind-boggling to me considering how good that defense always is. But as we said, Nick Bosa, the pass rush, Fred Warner being the best inside linebacker, that's going to get the majority of the love, rightfully so.
yeah, gets a little bit overlooked out there, but he is a very physical player
Yeah,
too. Good run defender for his position. So for my fifth player, I got big play Slay, Darius Slay. I'm big time Darius Slay fan, man. He's one of those guys. He'll go get the ball for
mm-hmm.
you. He's gonna make big plays, and if you haven't noticed, I like corners that go and get the football and make big plays.
I like it.
I think that turned the game on its head. I want corners that go and take risks, man. You know, I hate watching teams methodically drive down the field on you, and even the corner is right in the perfect position. The quarterback's going to put the ball exactly where it needs to be sometimes. You need those playmakers to just change the game. And I think Darius Slay's been one of those guys since he's been in the NFL. And he continues to get his hand on passes and don't expect anything to change in Philadelphia. He's got his running mate across from him that makes things a little bit easier, and James Bradbury, and they're still together. Um, yeah, what more can you say? Expect big things out of Darius Slay again next
I
year.
like it.
Yeah, I actually have. This is the first time, but Darius Slay at number 5 that we kind of match, which y'all kind of hit the drum on everything except for one thing I kind of seen when I dug into them. It's pretty interesting to me. You know, playoff football, that's when you're playing the best of the best. You're playing number one guys. They're supposed to be the guys. And this year in the playoffs, out of all 3 of their playoff games, he allowed 25 yards in each of them. So I mean, that dude's locking people down in the big moments when the camera's on them. And like you said, I think with James Bradbury coming on this team, it just helped him even more knowing like, hey, I'm not having to worry about, this guy across from me getting burnt all the time. He's going to lock his stuff down. All I got to do is focus on my play, which I think that just helped him so much.
Absolutely.
I love it, Christian. I I thought I guess his bad 2021 left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, and I was fearsome that his play last year wouldn't get recognized. But it's hard not to with as good as the Eagles are. So I'm glad to see him on both y'all's list. All right, so we're moving to number 4. I think here it's like the jump to me. These top 4 guys, I think, are the best of the best. I would love them as my CB1 any day of the week. And the 4th guy, I think, one of the younger ones on this list, but he's just been out in Denver shutting things down since he's been in the league, and that's Patrick Surtain. Uh, Last year he held three wide receivers got over 50 yards on Patrick Surtain last year. Devontae Adams twice and DJ Moore, shockingly enough. So the guy's just not giving up yards. He's shutting down whoever he's outside, and just because Denver's been a little subpar the last few years, I think he hasn't got enough shine. But he grades well everywhere. He's big, physical shutdown, and he's playing in that altitude, and he's playing every snap. Like he's fit as a drum, man. He's shut down as it gets. I think there's huge upside. He creates a few more turnovers. Denver plays a little better football. I think he'll be recognized as a top 3, a top 2 corner in the game. For the other guys, there's just a little more name power, a little more winning football, and that's the reason I got them above him. But nothing to do with Surtain's play, man. I love everything about the guy.
Cool. Yeah, I love Surtain, man. So at number 4, I got Jair Alexander for Green Bay. Big fan. I do think some people are going to have him higher on this list, but man, shutdown corner. I mean, freaky, twitchy, gets his hand on a lot of passes and has really been locking stuff down in Green Bay. If there's anything you can kind of knock him for, is a little bit of consistency and being greedy and giving stuff up. He's a playmaker, and I think he really has the talent to be up here in the top 3. He's right there with these other guys. He's really not too far behind them, but I do think he's a sizable bit better than Darius Slay at number 5. So I'm with you there, Chase. I do think this is like a step up in corner right here. But Jair Alexander graded the 82.1 coverage grade, which is 6th best in the NFL, and had 5 picks last year with 14 passes defense. I mean, he got his hands all over footballs, and the production speaks for itself. And I expect him to probably be better this year.
Man, I hate to do it. I know it's going to start something, but at number 4, I have Jalen Ramsey. I did this just because, one, he had the injuries with the Rams, and we've already seen it in Miami. So I put him at 4 just because, one, it's a new defense. He's missing snaps that I think are key for him in this defense that he's not getting now. So now he's going to have to get it in live action, which this is a guy I don't think is going to have a problem with that. But I just think just the 2 years of injuries kind of concern me, bumped him down a little bit. But I just think if he actually picks up this defense and how good he is at the run stop at the corner position, honestly, probably the best corner at stopping the run, just off of really thinking real quick off the top of my head, he could have a great year in this defense. But my concern is just the greediness, new defense, new people around him, and not getting the snaps at all because of the injury he just had. And he's not going to be back until later, maybe Brian, you'd know the maybe closest answer than all of us.
December?
When he's expected to come back.
Oh, October. Okay.
So, that's why I put him at 4, just because, he's not, his stats compared to these other corners, he's going to be missing some stats just because he's missing some time.
Okay. That's fair, Christian. For number 3 for me, I have Sauce Gardner, baby. I want to put him higher. I really do. But the other 2, I've just done it for more than a year now. But I hadn't seen a corner with this much hype around him coming out the draft in a while. His career in Cincinnati really was highlighted all season. Like he was talked about every week in college football circles his whole career, and for good reason. That's warranted the high draft selection from the Jets, and I think he every bit produced and stepped up and lived up to the billing when he got in that spotlight last year. Just looking at some numbers I wrote down for him, his 20 forced incompletions, which Brian talked about earlier, the guy who was second. Sauce was first in that list of 20 forced incompletions. His 0.59 yards allowed per coverage snap, less than a yard per coverage snap, was the lowest in the NFL. Just a true eraser. I'm trying to see if this other number here. 27% forced incompletion rate also led the league. So, that's leading the league in those type of categories is enough to warrant a top three. I mean, it may be one season worth of work, but those are important categories to lead. And he looked every bit the part. I think there's not much downside to his game. He can really do whatever you want out of a corner. And matching up against Garrett Wilson, one of the higher receivers I'm on every day in practice, will only sharpen his game. I think another big year is in for him in New York. And they made a smart and great selection. Is it now Gardner Island? Are we getting Revis Island V2 now? I mean, I don't want to put that much hype around him because Revis is one of the best corners I've ever seen in my lifetime. But he looks every part of that, man. Like he's got the full package, and he's a true eraser out there. So I got him at 3, just because the other 2 guys ahead have a little more longevity so far.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys are expecting me to say Sauce Gardner, but unfortunately, I don't think you made my list.
Oh, God.
Good bait.
I got him at number 3, man. I got him at number 3. And yes, like you said, Chase, he was phenomenal last year, right? And he did everything he was supposed to do. I mean, really, he came in as a highly touted cornerback with some of the highest expectations I've seen on any defensive player that's come out in a long time. And he had the highest PFF coverage grade, 90.1. He had the most passes deflected. You touched on some other stats that shine some good light on him. But I did want to highlight some of the other things. You said he was a rookie. This is his first time playing a full season. And he kind of got a little bit lucky with some of the matchups they had. He ended up facing 5 backup quarterbacks this season.
Okay.
Twice against Miami, and then he saw Kenny Pickett with Kenny Pickett's first action. So he saw a rookie getting his first play, and he played against 5 backup quarterbacks. That's 6 games. That makes his production look a little better than I think it actually was. Okay? So I'm asking just pump the brakes a little bit. I got him at 3. I'm still really high on him. But Jalen Ramsey, man. Jalen Ramsey.
So what'd you have Tyreek Hill on your receiver list? Was it 2, 3? Okay.
Yep, 2.
So you're confident matching up Tyreek Hill against Sauce
Gardner? Oh, I think it could be ugly.
Oh,
because look,
okay.
I think Gardner is very good.
Golly.
Look, but he is a long corner.
Okay.
Long, high hip corner. Tyreek Hill is low center gravity. A better matchup for somebody like Sauce would be a DK Metcalf. Not a speed demon Tyreek Hill, okay? He's got long, lingy arms. I mean, we're talking about a guy that can cut and move, okay? Look, this is not the kind of player you want Sauce matched up against, but that's just my take.
I just figure, if he's your third corner, that's good enough to, erase most guys' number 1s, but I guess not good enough to erase Tyreek Hill. That's okay.
That's Tyreek Hill, baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm big on.
That's gonna be a nice matchup.
I had
there.
Hill at I think 3 on my list, man. I'm big on him too, but sauces, nasty now.
All right, number 3, I have Jair Alexander. I think a lot of people forget that this dude did have a big injury. Not this year, but the year before. He came back from that injury. He allowed a 66.2 passer rating when targeted. And like Brian said, his PFF grade was 82.1. But I think a lot of people kind of forget he did have 5 interceptions, like Brian also said, but that was a career high for him. I think he's only getting better each year. And another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about with this guy is he's young still. He's only 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think a lot this year is going to be a hype more on Green Bay's side, on the defensive side of the ball without Aaron there. I think this defense knows they're going to have to make plays and produce and put even more weight on their shoulders. But he did have 8 pass breakups last year. And, they still have, Detroit, the Vikings. It's kind of another division where their quarterback play is kind of a question mark, not as bad as we can say with Carolina, Atlanta in that division. But I just expect him to have maybe big games in their division. The only thing that kind of scares me is, of course, going to be the Vikings. He's going to be lined up with Jefferson. But I expect him to live up to that one-on-one matchup and just expect him to have a great year and be a top 3 corner and just get better with just being 26.
Yeah, I like that, Christian. I'll never fault a guy that gets beat by Justin Jefferson, and Jair is still one of the best, no matter what that guy does against him. And I like it so much, I've got him at number 2. He's my second ranked corner. I think the longevity and the numbers he's put up over a few more years has him above Sauce for me. Speaking to that, going back to 2019, his 90.1 PFF grade and single coverage is the highest. So you put him on an island, and he's grading very, very well. He got some more interceptions last year, which he was targeted a bit more, but he lived up to it, man. He's every bit the eraser you want to be, and if all for nothing, he's a great interview. That we saw that after the Dolphins game last year, and I think he's one of the cooler personalities in the league. And I think you need that. If there's a position you want like a cool, like diva, like I'm that guy personality, I think corner's the guy, because you're matching up against some dogs, man. Like especially in this league, you got a stud out there, first round pick with burners and hands that can burn you every play, and you can get embarrassed on some double moves, and you just got to swallow it and wear it on your sleeve, because that's a position you can't take any type of failure to heart. I think Jair did that with his rough game against Justin Jefferson. But as I said, I'll never fault a guy for getting burnt by the best receiver in my mind. Just a solid player. Green Bay should lean on him as they continue to. Christian, you touched on it. He's young. He's getting better. He's number 2 for me.
Cool. Yeah. Number 2, I got Jalen Ramsey. Might have thought would have been number 1, but Ramsey, he's kind of transitioning into a different stage of his career and what he's going to be asked to do and what he's going to do. I know early in his career, years ago, number 1 corner in the league for me when he was in Jacksonville, and he was this press lock down corner, and you really couldn't do much about it. He was going to lock down his side of the field, and whoever it was his matchup was. But as he's transitioned into this more like slot move around chess piece, like he has with the Rams and Sean McVay, he's kind of broadened his horizons as he goes forward, because he is probably the best run defending corner in the league. He gets to the ball and he tackles, and he can read the screen. He can pick apart an offense, and he can do a lot of things for a defense. And I think that's really what adds that extra value. So we're just talking about straight up man coverage at this point. There's a couple guys that are better than him as he's gotten a little bit older, but his ability to play zone, move around the defense, and tackle is kind of what separates him from a lot of the other corners in the league.
Yeah. All right, my number 2 guy, as a Chargers fan, I love saying this, but, Broncos country, let's ride. I got Patrick Surtain at number 2. I think, with Denver having such a bad year, people kind of didn't really pay close attention to this guy, but being a Chargers fan, I kind of look closer to this guy because he's in our division. Some stats that kind of I looked at, one, he's not a flashy corner like others. He's really quiet, kind of like what y'all just said. You want a diva, but this guy's kind of the total opposite. It's all about business. So, but I mean, his rookie year, his PFF grade was a 66.3. This year, he bumped it up to an 86.7. And this was the stat that really, I looked into it, blew my mind even more. He had 12 games that he allowed fewer than 25 receiving yards, including his final 6 games. So, right there, this guy just, right when I read that, I had to bump him up even more. It's just, I think maybe Sean Payton could fix this Denver team. Being a Chargers fan, I hope not. I hope it goes kind of like it did last year. But if somehow they get some magic going on over there, and this defense actually, are not getting blown out every game, this will make him show how he's even more of a top 2 where I have him. I think kind of just the way Denver's looking is kind of maybe why y'all are not so high on them, knowing that the future is kind of not bright for them. But I'm just going to put some love on this guy just because I think he's good. I see him going up against definitely Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and kind of holding his own going up against my guys I have a lot of faith in. So, I respect him so much, I put him at 2.
I like it, Christian. Yeah, I think me and Brian were a little lower. I don't know, maybe because of the Denver shine, I guess, but at least for me. But he's very solid, and that nugget you pulled of holding just any team, like it could be the Ravens you're facing. We know we didn't have a good wide receiver 1, but holding our top guy, whoever that would have been, under 25 yards and doing that week in, week out, that's enough in itself. That's a great nugget from you because he's completely shutting guys down. They're even if they're catching the ball, they're not moving it forward on them. So great pull from you, Christian. So getting to the top guy on my list, y'all both hit on him. I've got Jalen Ramsey, which going into this, I really didn't expect to have him as my top guy. We saw some glimpses of human, or he looked human like at times last year. Like he was actually getting beat a few times, but he's still so strong in every other area, and the versatility and the new defense. I had really high hopes for him this year. That's why I'm bummed to see the injury in training camp because I think he does so much for the Dolphins defense next year. But what sets him over the edge for me, and y'all have both touched on this, was the tackling, the run defense. His 91.8 grade in run defense in last year was the highest. He's an excellent tackler. He still may not have his shine that he did coming into the league in man coverage, but he's still very solid in that aspect. And he's a smart player, man. He knows how to game plan and expect what to expect from receivers and quarterbacks when he steps on the field. And this position, being prepared in that aspect is enough to play well. And then he's got the talent to go out and execute that. So I'll have him at 1 for me, just based off the extra he gives you in the run game and the versatility and ability to move all around the field. I'm excited to see him in a Dolphins uniform, even as a Ravens fan. I want to see what he does with this defense, and I'm looking forward to him being healthy and getting out there.
Sweet, man. Yeah, Joe Ramsey's got that dog in him.
He do.
Like, he's one of those players, man. He's just got that dog in him. He said he's going to beat the recovery time by a month. We'll see if that happens. I put him back early October. Yeah. So my number one guy is Patrick Surtain. Extremely high on him. I just think he's going to be a shutdown corner for a very long time. He's got all the intangibles, physical as all get out, length for days. I think he's got the full package for real. He can guard anyone in the NFL. And I really don't see shortcomings in this game. I mean, this guy can tackle. He can come up and be physical at the line of scrimmage and press man. He can play zone. I think he's going to be just extremely deadly in any defense that he's in. And unfortunately, he plays for Denver.
Yeah.
I just don't have high expectations for them as a team. But when you're consistently having to bail the offense out over and over and over again, then your defense just doesn't break, that shows you something. I mean, it was all year long. You would expect for an offense that played as poorly as Denver's did, by the end of the year, attrition and everything else, the defense had fallen apart. But no, Patrick Surtain was out there shutting dudes down every single week, the last 6 weeks of the season. That's normally when defenses start wearing down, or the offenses do. You know, attrition happens both ways, but, you know, just for them to just be so consistent on defense week in, week out, it was so impressive.
Yeah, that's a lot to weight to put on your shoulders, knowing that, hey, if this opposing team scores more than 10, we might be in real trouble. And that's kind of how it was with Denver last year. It felt that way, and Patrick Surtain didn't let those expectations or those lack of production from the offense get to him and his play. And I'm really high on the guy as well. I'm glad y'all showed him as much love as y'all did.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I guess that concludes.
Whoa, wait a minute. Number one. Wait a minute now. My bad. So at number one, man, you know, I heard Brian saying some junk earlier in this podcast. This man talking about hit the brakes. But like my boys say on College Game Day in Lee, not so fast, my friend. We hitting the gas on my boy Sauce Gardner. This guy, man, I think, you know, the Miami bias is over there on Brian's side. I got Sauce Gardner at number one, man. Number one. This guy's number one, man. No, number one. I think with who their head coach is, we seen what he did as a rookie. Their head coach wants their defense to be great. And I think with this guy on the team, he's just going to be even more great. He only allowed 53.9 passer rating, and just 45.9% of those passes were even caught in his coverage. I think he'll have no problem covering some Tyreek Hill. I think he's ready for that matchup real soon. But I just think we've seen the interceptions. He had 2 as a rookie. I think that number just goes up. He had 14 pass breakups I expect him to have a great year in this Jets with the Aaron Rodgers hype going on in New York, the New York media hyping this team up. I think they are ready for the hype up, and I think just we see how excited this team is, and kind of like my boy Chase hit on, with him going up against Garrett Wilson every day in practice, he's just going to even get better, sharpen his skills up even more. So I think Sauce Gardner, I got him down for a big year, and this Jets football team for a big year.
Yes, sir. Preach to the man, Christian.
Hey, man.
Because I mean,
Mod hold Gardner.
I had him at 3 too.
Sauce
I
Gardner.
Self slide, but the only reason I think when we make this list next year, Sauce is like my betting favorite. Put my savings account on Sauce Gardner being the number one guy for me next year. The only reason I didn't is because he's done it for a year, whereas Jair and Jalen Ramsey have done it for more. But I think going into my money, if we're drafting fantasy football, NFL, building a team, you want me to draft a corner? I'm drafting Sauce Gardner. I love Surtain.
Tell him, Chase. Speak to me.
Yeah, I love it, Christian. Call him out on it, man. Call him out on it.
Oh man, I'm ready for the season, baby. One season, all these backup quarterbacks.
I ain't worried about none of that.
Do it again.
The pod after.
Before I put you over at Jalen Ramsey.
The pod episode after Tua gets picked off by Sauce Gardner is going to be a
thank you.
I cannot wait.
We'll see about that.
Golly. Can't wait, man. Can't wait for that matchup.
So, hold on. Where'd you have Tariq Woolen? Because he had very similar production, my guy.
But, man, I had him at 9. But as you got to think of that type of defense Seattle plays, the Jets don't play that type of defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they play some cover 3.
Nah, not like that, solid. Man.
Sauce is different, man. He's a step up from Woolen. I respect Woolen in his game, but Sauce, I'm telling you, dude, like all the numbers back it up too. Like everything that Christian pulled, like it.
And to me, like Chase kind of hinted on, Sauce Gardner been having this on him since college.
Mm-hmm.
He was, a top first round pick. The other guy was in the 6th round, 5th round pick at corner. So he didn't have that much on him like Sauce Gardner did when he came into the league, and he held his own coming in.
Mm-hmm.
No, but he led the NFL interceptions as a rookie.
I hear you, man. But
it's kind of hard to make the plays when you're just like guys are not going to throw at you. That's why this position's so subjective. We talked on it, man. It's hard to put up numbers when you're that good, like because good quarterbacks know all right, he may be matched up on one of our best receivers, but he's that guy. Like it's going to take some real good scheming to get my guy open on him. And Sauce is just he's different, man. I thought he lived up to that expectation.
Sauce Gardner's you talking about a dog? That's Sauce Gardner, a dog. So who goes into Green Bay, walks out with a cheese head on his head during the game, baby? Only Sauce Gardner's doing that.
Oh my God!
You gonna meet Jalen Ramsey? Bro.
He gonna meet who?
He
ain't gonna meet him until the second matchup. He'll be out. Sauce Gardner be on the field.
Oh.
All right.
Can't wait, man.
Yeah, that was fun, guys.
Well,
I like it.
Yep. I think that concludes today's pod. I hope everyone enjoyed, and boy, I know all of us can't wait. Just a short 5 weeks from now to the start of the season, 4.5 from the release of this pod. So. Join us next time. Peace.
Peace, guys.
Peace. Man.